following is a presentation of Puska Media Services on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network. Welcome to the Sports Hub, a reoccurring podcast featuring stories and interviews on various hot topics in sports and from Northern Ontario to across Canada and around the world. Listen to the Sports Hub at puskamediaservices.com, on social media via Facebook, X and Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and more. Now here is your host, Denis J. Puska.
Yes, we are glad to have you with us for episode 14 of the Sports Hub on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network. I'm Denis J. Puska. We hope you're enjoying your summer so far. The weather here in Northern Ontario has been dry for the past little while and really hot and humid, but things are expected to cool off eventually, and hopefully we will get a little bit more rain. But so much going on in the world of sports right now. You've got the World Cup of Soccer in Canada, Mexico, and the United States now getting down to the nitty-gritty, round of 16, round of 8, and soon they'll be crowning a champion for that, so that's pretty amazing there. The NHL season finally in its off mode as they concluded the NHL draft in Buffalo, New York, and also wrapped up the NHL free agent frenzy on Canada's birthday, July 1st, so that was great to see as well. We've had some great golf tournaments happening, and even across Northern Ontario, a lot of major events going on. The Northern Ontario Walleye Trail is in full swing as they just wrapped up the Geraldton Walleye Derby that took place in beautiful Geraldton, Ontario, and that is a subject of our video podcast that we like to call Catching Gold, the official podcast of the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail. So lots going on in the north. Today on our program, we are going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to the horses, and specifically, we're going to be talking about Arabian horses and the Canadian National Arabian Horse Championship that'll take place August 6th to the 15th at the beautiful Keystone Center located in Brandon, Manitoba. Now, my guest on our program is Tex Kam. He'll be talking to us from Edmonton, Alberta. He is part of the organizing group getting ready for that national championship. He is president of the Canadian Arabian Horse Registry and also vice president of the National Arabian Breed Association as well. But he'll be talking all about the national championship, what to expect there, and how it's become a wonderful spectator sport for everyone to go to. We'll talk about Arabian horses in Canada and in North America and how the different disciplines are being contested all over North America, doing very well, and how Canadian Arabian Horse Championships is really becoming a very popular event for those to attend to. We're happy to have Tex Kam join us on our program, and a very special thank you to the Arabian Horse Association and Beatriz Arana for helping us coordinate and set up this interview, and we're looking forward to sharing that with you. Then coming up at the conclusion of our show and at the conclusion of the interview, we'll preview next edition of our program and a very special interview about a young man in Kapuskasing who recently completed a hockey season all over in England. That is all coming up. But first, we're going to pause for a quick break. When we come back, it is our Podomatic interview spotlight and my conversation with Tex Kam from the Canadian National Arabian Championship that'll take place in August at the Keystone Center in Brandon, Manitoba. That is on the way next. You're listening to episode 14 of the Sports Hub on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, brought to you by Puska Media Services.
This is the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, the home of the Sports Hub. Between the Bay and the Bench, with your MPP Guy Bourgoin. All jacked up, the official podcast of the Hearst Lumberjacks of the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. Be Northern proud, Be Northern Aware, a fraud prevention podcast series, and Catching Gold, the official podcast of the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail. Tune in at PuskaMediaServices.com, on social media with Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and wherever you get your podcasts at YouTube, Apple, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Listen to one of our episodes today. Join us all spring and summer long for a new video podcast, Catching Gold, brought to you by the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail. Each episode hosts Denis J. Puska and NOWT executive members and anglers Dean Bliss and Shane Turcott bring you insight and highlights on all of the tour stops throughout the North, as well as interviews with the anglers and much more. Tune in to Catching Gold on the YouTube channels of the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail, the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, as well as at PuskaMediaServices.com.
This interview segment on the Sports Hub is presented by Podomatic, the official streaming provider of Puska Media Services and the Northern Corridor Podcast Network. Learn more and start your podcast today at Podomatic.com.
And welcome back to the Sports Hub here on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network. I'm Denis J. Puska. It is time now for our interview spotlight presented by our friends at Podomatic, the official streaming provider of Puska Media Services. For more, visit Podomatic.com and help them start up your free podcast, and you can go all set with them. And on our show today, we're taking a little bit of a different approach in what we do on our show. Today, we're going to talk about Arabian horses, and we're going to talk about a major event coming next month to Brandon, Manitoba and the Keystone Center. It is Canada's National Arabian Championship, and Tex Kam is joining us today on our program. And Tex has a couple of roles with the group and in Canada, and we're happy to have him. He's the vice president of the National Arabian Breed Association, and he's also involved with some other groups as well. And it's great to have him joining us from Edmonton. Tex, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate the invite. We're definitely excited to be back in Brandon, Manitoba this year for our show, and want to share as much information and invite as many people as possible.
So talk a little bit about, first, your dual roles, a little bit about what you do and what both your organizations are all about for people who may not know.
Well, my name is Tex, and that is not a nickname, unfortunately. That is my real name. So I'm kind of cursed. I'm like the boy named Sue. My dad named me Tex, so I think there was no other job for me in the world other than being in the horse business. I have been the president of the Canadian Arabian Horse Registry here in Alberta. We register all purebred Arabians and part-bred Arabians across Canada, and I've had that role. We've been in as a nonprofit since 1958, I believe, and I have been in this role. It's a volunteer position, but I've been in the role as president on the board of directors for probably creeping up 20 years, maybe a little over 20 years.
Wow.
And then a few years ago, I got into running horse shows through the registry. And then this opportunity came to revive this national show for Canada. It had got canceled during COVID, and the show never ran for 3 years. It had a huge impact on our Canadian trainers. Even though we get people from all over the US and Canada showing, the Americans put on some shows on their side of the border and kind of, made sure that their market was looked after. But in Canada, we didn't have that. So I stepped up and I pulled together a group of volunteers. And once the show got canceled in Canada 3 years running, I just said, we can't continue or we're going to see huge problems in our industry. And we were already headed that way. A lot of our trainers were worried about losing their farms or having to shut them down and going and get a job off the farm because they couldn't sustain this national show that Canada had since 1958 was actually, it was kind of the pinnacle of what happens in Canada with the Arabian horse. Everybody sort of works towards that all year long. So not having it for 2020, 2021 and 2022, those 3 years were canceled. It was really tough on our horse economy.
Well, now that you've got it going again, talk about the excitement of the national championship coming up next month in beautiful Brandon.
Well, we started off in 2022 and we held the show only because it was just the easiest thing to do for us. A lot of our volunteer staff are from Alberta. And so we ran the show the first 3 years in Red Deer, and it was wonderful. But the problem that we ran into is it wasn't central. It's not close to the U.S. border. And probably half of our competitors that come up are U.S. based. We get people from Florida, from Virginia, California, Arizona, Texas, you name it. They come from all over. So we made the decision last year to move the show back to Brandon, which is where it was prior to the COVID cancellations. And that had a really big success. We were able to attract a lot of those southern U.S. farms and some of the eastern Canadian farms that also wouldn't attend because it was in Red Deer. By placing it in Brandon, it really made a difference for just the exhibitors to be able to look at that and put it on their calendars. Now, the city of Brandon, I cannot say enough, from the mayor, the facility. We had Wob Canoe out there. We had the premier out there for a couple events last year. He even got on one of the Arabian horses. We thought it was a photo op, and he started riding it around the showgrounds. Like it was, and he was mobbed by even the Americans. Were mobbing him for autographs and to shake his hand and things like that. It was quite exciting. So we had a good turnout from the local community, but we're obviously looking for more. There's no charge to attend. We have almost everything you can imagine, with the exception of racing. The horses ride in Western competition. They ride in English competition. We have dressage. We have trail courses where they go over obstacles. Almost anything you're interested in the horse world, you can come to our show over 10 days. It runs from the 6th to the 15th, and you can almost see anything that you're interested in if you're interested in horses. And if you don't know one end of the horse from the other, you're more than welcome also, because we'll take you out to the barns. We'll tour you around. It's all free for the families. There's no charge for parking. We really encourage people to come out and meet these horses.
That's pretty amazing stuff. What is the signature event? Would you suggest that's the show jumping? Is it maybe one of the dressage or one of the riding? What do you suggest is maybe the signature event?
There's kind of 2 or 3 pinnacles in the horse show. We start the horse show off with what's called sport horse and the dressage. And those, it seems like people are kind of, I won't say pigeonhole is not the right word, but they really like those events. So there's first 3 or 4 days involves these type of events. And then the championships all happen. And then later in the week, we have more of, I guess you could call it's the Western and the English classes riding around the arena. We call it the main ring. So it doesn't really matter what time of the week you come. There will always be championships. It's not an event where everything leads up to the final couple days. There's championships basically from the start of the show all the way through, just in the way we have it broken down. So no matter when you come, you'll be able to see, we award the rose blankets like you would see on the Kentucky Derby winner. That's what they put on the horses when they win. And so whatever you're interested in, and you can come to our website, actually, if there's things that you specifically want to see. The schedule's up on our website, arabiannationals.com. And you can sort of pick and choose your days when you want to come. But there's no one particular day, which is, the championship day or anything like that. It's staggered throughout the whole show.
So it depends on what you're interested in as a viewer, and maybe what you want to bring the family to go see, correct?
Yes, exactly. If we even have things, I call it's halter classes, which is like, if you've ever watched the dog show, how they stand the dog up and they judge him on conformation. Horses are the same way. The one thing about Arabian horses is they're the oldest breed of horses on the planet. Almost every other light horse breed, quarter horses, all of the horses you can think, thoroughbreds, race horses, they all derive from the Arabian horse. The Arabian horse was the original horse on the planet, goes back, tens of thousands of years to the desert. And those horses used to live with the Bedouins in the tent. The wives and the children lived in another tent, but the sheikhs kept his best horses because that was your lifeline in the desert. They lived with him in his own tent and stayed right by his side. So after even all these thousands of years later, these horses are very, very attuned to people. They're probably, they can almost feel, I watch these shows, again, I'll equate it back to the dogs, how, the dog can feel your tension through the leash and that sort of stuff. These Arabian horses are the same way, and a lot of horses are, but I think Arabian horses even much more. They're very, very empathetic horse. And if you're having a down day, a lot of disabled riding programs and things like that will use Arabian horses just because they're so attuned to people from thousands and thousands of years of breeding these horses. They'll kind of go to hell and back for you. They are the number one horse in the world for endurance racing. There's a race in California called the Tex Kam. It's 100 miles in one day. And It's not 100 miles on the flat plain. It's 100 miles up the mountains outside of Reno and, up and down the mountains and across bridges and all that. And a lot of horses will do that. And say there's 100 horses will start that race. Probably 85% of them or even more are Arabian horses. And that's usually the winner most times.
Now, would you say that a lot of the Arabian horses dominate the big things we see on TV, the equestrian show jumping, the 3-day dressage, the eventing events, and things like that?
They don't, and I'll tell you why. Is they are not. Most of those horses you see, like when you watch Spruce Meadows or you watch, the rodeos, those are racing. Those horses are specifically bred for one purpose, and that's to be the fastest, be the strongest, jump the highest. And the Arabians have never been, I guess, bred for that. They're considered the versatile breed. When I got in this 50 years ago, that was sort of the tagline on an Arabian was the versatile breed. So you could take that same horse to a show, go to a gymkhana with it, ride it in an English class, hook it to a buggy, and do some jumping with it, and maybe race it all in the same day. Now, was it the fastest at any of those? Probably not, or the highest jumper. But what they've done with Arabian horses is they have crossed them with other breeds. Okay. And a lot of these show jumpers you go back in the pedigrees, a lot of these show jumpers have Arabian in the breed because it kind of lightens them up and gives them some agility too. So they're kind of a hybrid vigor, I guess, is what I guess they call it. But they're not the fastest or the highest, but they're the most versatile. They can do almost anything.
That is amazing there. That is Tex Kam, and we're talking about the Canadian National Arabian Horse Championship coming to Brandon in August. Talk about the training the horses will do, Tex, for this championship and for this event.
We have classes at the show starting from a year old, and from a yearling to about 3 years old. Those are what they're called halter classes, which are just like they stand them up, they trot them in the arena, they show them, and they're based on conformation because they're not old enough to ride yet, obviously. And then from then on in, the rest of it is all performance classes, we call it, of different, there's driving classes with the buggy, there's Western classes. We even have native costume classes where they dress up like they did back in the desert back in the days and have those classes. Most of these horses you will see are in training for years. It's not something where you pull, the horse out of the pasture the week before the show. Most of these horses are in year-round training. at some of the biggest stables across North America, and it's a very, very specialized training that goes into these horses to make them the best that they are. And a lot of the horses that win in Brandon will go on to the U.S. National Championships in October down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So it's a lot of work, a lot of dedication. Canada has really been on the forefront of Arabian horse breeding and training for decades. It's been very, very strong in Canada for Arabian horses. The struggles, I guess, that horses are facing globally right now is, people are just, urbanization. When I grew up, everybody either lived on a farm or had an aunt or an uncle that lived on a farm or stayed with, some relative that on the farm for the summer. That doesn't happen anymore. We have generations of children who've never been to a farm. So, that and the cost of land and all of those sort of things are making it tougher for people to have an agricultural background. So we recognize that. And one of the things we're trying to do is, find ways to get the horses back out to the kids, because that's kind of where it all starts. It seems to start with the kids. And we have a largely predominantly female participation. So what you'll have is you have a lot of young girls who fall in love with these horses, and then they go on to a career and a family. But when that sort of gets settled, they end up coming back to the horses in droves because it was kind of their first love. And you'll see that, once the rest of their life is settled and sort of in place, they kind of drift back to the horse world again, and they just love it.
That is wonderful. And it's all about the relationship, whatever the relationship between horse and owner, horse and rider. Relationship is everything, isn't it? Once they get attached and the owner and then the person gets attached to the horse, the relationship, the bond begins there, and then there you go, right?
Definitely. I have a friend here just outside of Edmonton. He runs, it's called the Arabian Horse Reading Literacy Program. He'll shoot me if I screwed that up, and I probably did. But he brings a lot of kids out and it introduces them into reading, and he has them read to the horses. And I said to him, I said, Gary, like, what does that do? And he says, well, the horses don't judge. The horses never say you made a mistake. And it really builds confidence in these kids. And he's moved this program over to adults with PTSD. And they come out and work with the horses, and the horses give them a real calming influence. And it's made a world of difference in these people's lives. And again, the Arabian horses being so attuned with humans, it's just a natural fit. It's just one and one. One of the big things is you'll hear a lot is, oh, Arabian horses, they're all crazy. Oh, those Arabs. And some of them are. They're a very hot horse. They were bred and developed to be a war horse in the desert. Mm-hmm. And some of them still have that spirit. But a lot of them will be the kindest, sweetest horses you could imagine that you could put the smallest child on. And they seem to know. I've had horses in my life that they know when a child's present, and they're just so attuned to those humans. And then when it's time to go to a show, well, they've got their tail up over their back and they're snorting. And, you think you can hardly hold on to that sucker. And then the little kid comes along and they just quiet right down. It's like they know they're on the stage and when to perform and when not to.
That is pretty cool. Amazing stuff there. You mentioned that you're not-for-profit organization. What does that mean, and how do you go about maybe giving back to the community as well?
Well, one of the things we would like to do, this is year 5 for us. So we started this as a not-for-profit association. We're still building. We're right around break even. We'd like to try to get more horses. That's our goal, is getting more horses to come to the show. And then we'd like to give, if we can get to the point of making some profit, we'd like to be able to offer bursaries and things like that, to that younger generation, for schooling and different things like that. That is our ultimate goal. to give back to the community and sort of support the children who love these horses.
How can people support your organization? What can they do to help you?
Really, the biggest thing that we would like to see at this point is just come out to the show and meet the horses. Come out and, we're all available. The place is wide open. There's no barriers to entry, so to speak. If you want to see a horse and meet a horse, we'll make that available for you. I think the biggest thing we're trying to get is exposure. And we almost feel that the horses sell themselves. If you come out and you see them and you get to meet them and you get to pet them, they grow on you pretty fast. They're their own best salesman.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's amazing. You guys have also gotten the support of the Arabian Horse Association as well. Again, what does that mean? How important is that?
It's big. There's kind of a long history in that this show, when it started in 1958, was run by Canadians. And then somewhere in the 80s, the horse show was actually taken over by AHA out of Denver, because AHA is actually the ones that sanctions all the Arabian shows in North America. So even though they had some Canadian volunteers, the actual profits from the show, when the show was going all those years from like sort of the 80s upwards, was all getting funneled back to Denver. So when that show was canceled because of COVID, and it didn't look like they could make any money with it, the show, in my mind, was maybe canceled forever. So one of my ideas is for Canadians to own it, Canadians to run it, and any money, hopefully when we get to that stage, that money stays in Canada. I was looking at a couple of charities right in Brandon. One of the things we did last year is we auctioned off a painting. We had a painting that went on the cover of our program, and we're looking at donating that painting in a silent auction at some point, to one of the children's charities right in Brandon. So those types of things is what we're, trying to work towards.
Pretty amazing stuff. So how do people get ticket information first to come out? They just show up, or how can they get tickets?
There's no tickets. The doors are wide open. I believe it's the 6th to the 15th. It runs from the Thursday, August 6th, to the following Saturday, and starts 8 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night. So it's about a 12-hour day, and there's lunch breaks in between. But you just show up and you wander. You can go through the barns. You can see the horses. You can sit in the grandstands, and there's 2 different rings operating during the show. You can sit there free of charge. You don't need any tickets, and you can wander around any place on those showgrounds and look at anything you want. And anybody's more than welcome to reach out to anybody that's there. And if they want to see something in specific, we'll make it happen for them.
Wonderful. Talk about social media. How can people find both the championships and your groups on social media?
We are on Facebook only, but we are on, it's listed under the show name, which is Canada's National Arabian Championship. That pretty much is where I'd say we disseminate probably 90% of our information. If you're looking for scheduling and things like that, that is on our website, which is arabiannationals.com. And that'll have all of our information, when the show starts, the dates, the schedule, the list of classes, so you can see what's happening on each day. Everything will be there.
Wonderful. That is great. Anything else, Tex, that you want to mention or add that maybe we forgot?
Probably I'd just like to thank all of our volunteers and all of our sponsors. Being that we're a not-for-profit and we started this thing, after it had shut down for 3 years, it's been a real labor of love, and it's been tough. I won't lie. It's been tough to get it back, but we've grown the show every year. We started with a couple hundred horses in Red Deer, and every year we've increased it. We're hoping for between 300 and 400. So we've almost doubled the size of the show in 5 years, and we're hoping to keep growing. So I just would like to give, a shout out to all of our volunteers and our sponsors who have helped get us this far. And even those people that come and sit in the seats and buy a hot dog, we want everybody to come and sit and enjoy these horses. And that's what it's all about for us.
Do you think the challenges outweigh some of the tough days when you overcome these challenges, you move forward, you get the show out there? Does that make it all worthwhile at the end of the week of the championship and go, we did it. We did such a great job. Look at the people and everybody's excited. It's all worthwhile and we're moving in the right direction you guys want to move to?
Yes. I think you hit it right on the head. Leading up to the show, I think we question our sanity every year. Because we're all volunteers. We all have lives and jobs outside of this. But this becomes a full-time job, especially these last few months leading up to it. And yeah, we all question our sanity. It's like, why are we doing this? And then you get to the event and you see the smile on people's faces and you see the joy it brings to everybody and to us also. And there's a lot of camaraderie. We all know each other, even people from all over North America. We're all acquaintances and friends, and we all get together, and it's a big celebration. So when it's all over, I'm glad it's over. But it's a real celebration. It's a celebration for Canada. To me, it was very important that Canada own this show. It's called the Canadian Championships for a reason. And having the profits, if we can get to that point, stay in Canada and build things that are Canadian, I think it's very important. And that was my goal. I saw that as my role as being a Canadian, to make sure that, Canada doesn't get swallowed up. It's easy. We're such a small piece we're about 10% of the horse business that happens in the U.S. up here with the Arabians. So we're a very small piece of the pie. But we have a very good team at AHA, the new president at AHA, and AHA has a new CEO that started a month ago, and she's from Grand Prairie, Alberta. So
awesome.
Yeah, they'll both be coming to the show from Denver, and we're very excited, and they really want to see us succeed also. And they've given us a credit. The first 3 years, we didn't have any accreditation from them, but now we do as of last year. So they're giving points, and they've recognized the show. And so, yeah, we're all pulling the oars in the same direction now, which is really nice. And I think it'll benefit the horse and everybody associated with it.
Wonderful. We're going to leave it right there. Tex, thanks for taking time to join us on our program today and talk more about the Canadian National Championships. We wish you all the best of luck with this event and in the future. Horses are incredible animals. They're incredibly important and a big part of Canada. And we thank you and congratulate you on the great work that you guys do.
Thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate this and hope to see you all, whoever's listening, at the Keystone Center, August 6th to the 15th. Thank you very much.
That is Tex Kam from the group that is getting ready to put on the Canadian National Arabian Championship that'll take place at beautiful Keystone Center in Brandon, Manitoba. We'll come back and wrap things up in a moment. This is the Sports Hub on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, brought to you by Puska Media Services.
That Sports Hub interview segment was brought to you by Podomatic, the official streaming provider of Puska Media Services and the Northern Corridor Podcast Network. Learn more and start your podcast today at Podomatic.com. Fraud can happen to anyone, a friend, a family member, even you. And Puska Media Services invites you to check out Be Northern Proud, Be Northern Aware, a fraud prevention podcast series. It's an inside look at fraud prevention from experts that know and understand the subject. The Ontario Provincial Police, Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, Case Alliance, and Trevor's Computer Centre of CAP. Be Northern Proud. Be Northern Aware is proudly supported by the Northern Corridor Chamber of Commerce and Case Alliance of CAP. Tune into all 4 episodes at PuskaMediaServices.com and wherever you get your podcasts on Apple, Google Play, Amazon, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.
This is the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, the home of the Sports Hub. Between the Bay and the Bench with your MPP Guy Bourgoin. All Jacked Up, the official podcast of the Hearst Lumberjacks of the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. Be Northern Proud, Be Northern Aware, a fraud prevention podcast series, and Catching Gold, the official podcast of the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail. Tune in at PuskaMediaServices.com, on social media with Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and wherever you get your podcasts at YouTube, Apple, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Listen to one of our episodes today.
And welcome back to episode 14 of the Sports Hub. Again, a very special thank you to Tex Kam, part of the organizing committee for Canada's National Arabian Championship that again will take place next month at the Keystone Centre in Brandon, Manitoba. We thank Tex for taking time from his busy schedule for joining us and learning more about that event and learning more about Arabian horses in general. They're not only part of their own championship, but of course you see them in equestrian events all over, and they are just beautiful, beautiful horses, and we're happy that we were able to talk a little bit more about it. Again, thank you to Beatrice Arana from the Arabian Horse Association for coordinating this interview, and we had a lot of fun chatting, that is for sure. Well, friends, we just have enough time to tell you about next week's program, our next episode. We're going to be catching up with a guy we had on back at the end of Season 2. His name is Brendan Clavel. He's from Kapuskasing, Ontario, and he recently completed his first season in Manchester in the Elite Hockey League all over in England. Now, he had a great first season there, did very well. We'll get his thoughts on what playing over in England was like and his experiences there, and how he is getting ready for Season 2 there, as he was recently announced as a returnee for the 2026-27 season. Brendan Clavel from Kapuskasing will join us in an interview that you won't want to miss. And as well, on our program, we're going to talk more about some other sports events that are going on, including Guy Giroir, who will have a new job as an assistant coach in the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League this year. He is going to be in St. John, New Brunswick with the St. John Sea Dogs, and we'll learn more about his new role coming up as well. So plenty to get to over the course of the next episode. We do hope you'll stay with us. A quick reminder that this episode 14 of our program will also be available on video at our YouTube page at the Northern Corridor Podcast Network. So if you want to watch this again, maybe you missed something or would like to see the full video, head over to our YouTube page, like us, subscribe to our page at the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, and that full interview, video style, will be up for you to watch. So that is important, and we wanted to pass that news on your way. And while you're on our website, PuskaMediaServices.com, be sure to check out all of our other podcasts, including Between the Bay and the Bench with your MPP Guy Bourgoin, all about what's really going on at Queen's Park. Plus, we've got our show, Be Northern Proud, Be Northern Aware, a fraud prevention podcast series. It's a 4-part series that we put together all about fraud prevention with help of the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, and that was important to hear from them, as well as Case Alliance and Kapuskasing, the Northern Corridor Chamber of Commerce, and Trevor's Computer Center here in Kapuskasing, a great partnership we had there. And also, we've got All Jacked Up, the official podcast of the Hearst Lumberjacks of the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League. We're in the summer series talking about the offseason. Then we have got new episodes coming up with that as well, coming up in the weeks ahead. You won't want to miss. And also on our YouTube page, be sure to check out Catching Gold, the official podcast of the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail, a fishing tour that goes to some great lakes and rivers right across Northern Ontario, and we have the first 5 episodes up there, and we will be launching episode 6 next week. We're excited about that. It's all at PuskaMediaServices.com and wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, YouTube, the iHeartRadio app, so many places you can find us, but of course our home is PuskaMediaServices.com. We're also on social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Well, friends, that's going to do it for this edition of our program. For Tex Kam and all of us here, I'm Denis J. Puska. Be good, stay out of trouble. I'll try to do the same. We'll talk to you next time. This has been the Sports Hub on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, brought to you by Puska Media Services.
This has been the Sports Hub, a reoccurring podcast featuring stories and interviews on various hot topics in sports and sports lifestyle from Northern Ontario to across Canada and around the world. The Sports Hub Network Seasons 1 and 2 are available to listen to at any time at PuskaMediaServices.com on Podomatic, the official streaming provider of the Northern Corridor Podcast Network, and wherever you get your podcasts. The Sports Hub on the Northern Corridor Podcast Network was written and produced by Denis J. Puska, all rights reserved. This has been a 2025 Puska Media Services Studio 29 DP production.